For rock music aficionados, the album covers of the great artists of the 60s and 70s are as identifiable as the music. It was an era when the images and profiles of musicians wasn't so tightly controlled and manipulated by that entourage of publicists and marketing departments as they are today. Back in the day, photographer Henry Diltz gained unfettered access to the stars. Those who don't know his name would almost certainly know his work. It adorns some of the most memorable albums from that era. Kirsten Murray reports on the man behind the pictures.
All the leaves are brown, and the sky is grey, and the sky is grey.
I feel in my heart I'm a musician. Music still really moves me. My obsession is photography.
They're pictures that define an era and helped elevate rock photography to an art form. This is the work of Henry Diltz.
I guess being in LA at that time when there was a big musical renaissance going on, and being one of the early guys to have a camera and want to take pictures, that was all in my favor, you know. Kind of an accident.
Henry Diltz is like the Z-League or the Forrest Gump of rock photography, because whenever something interesting happened, there he was, sort of magically there.
What wasn't accidental, though, was the photographer's approach, which saw him get the access and the photos others could only dream of.
I want to be the fly on the wall, you know. And very often I say it's the pictures you don't take which lead to the good pictures.
Henry Diltz's rise to the top is all the more remarkable considering his career began by chance. Music was his first art, and it was while on tour with the Modern Folk Quartet that he bought a second-hand camera. He started by taking photos of his friends. Those friends just happened to be the rising stars of rock.
When was the first time you took a photo and you realised this could be more than a memento?
The first time was when I went to a club with the Buffalo Springfield in the afternoon, and I was photographing this big pink mural, and out came the Buffalo Springfield. To my surprise, a week later, a magazine called me and said, "We hear you have a picture of the Buffalo Springfield, and we'd like to run it, and we'll pay you $100. And I went, "Oh my gosh, that's great." So that was the start of my sort of career.
His pictures would not just grace the pages of magazines. There was a new art form emerging, the album cover.
Well, the album and the album cover became the primary artefacts of rock and roll in the middle 60s. You had this idea that the album was the main document of an artist's work, and they were all expressions of the artist's character, and you learnt about what they were as people, what they stood for, what they represented. It was seen as a complete statement of where that artist was at a moment in time.
Will you come see me?
When the group now known as Crosby, Stills and Nash needed publicity shots, Henry Diltz took them to this abandoned house in Hollywood. Little did he know at the time, the image would adorn their first album.
A couple days later, they decided on the order of the names Crosby, Stills and Nash. And so we said, "Oh my gosh, it's Nash, Stills and Crosby on here." I said, "Let's just go back, it'll take 5 minutes." You sit on the couch, click, click, click. So we all got in the car and drove back there, and the house was gone. And the couch was gone.
It wasn't there. I mean, it was just a pile of timber in the back.
This is why people for years have been coming up to me and saying, "Gee, Nash, so pleased to speak to you."
Jim Morrison liked Diltz's approach so much, the musician asked him to shoot the Doors' next cover. They hit the streets where they found this conveniently named hotel and snuck inside while the receptionist was away from his post.
And I said, "Quick, run in there." You guys jump in there behind the window. And they just went in there and just hit those places. And I took one roll of film, and they came out before the guy ever came down the elevator. Then Jim said, "Well, let's go get a drink."
My favourite story is the photograph of the Doors at the Hard Rock Cafe. The Hard Rock Cafe was this crappy little sort of Skid Row bar that the Doors stopped off at to have a drink. because Jim Morrison liked the name of it. But from those images, the Hard Rock Cafe empire was formed. But, you know, it all begins with Henry taking a photo of a band in a bar. I just love it.
Even pop stars began seeking the offbeat and candid approach. In 1974, when David Cassidy toured Australia, he brought along a personal photographer.
So I remember lying there in the morning with a pillow over my head because outside were hundreds of girls, you know, chanting, you know, "We love you, David, we always will," da, 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 you know, and I'm going, oh, shut up, you know.
Now Henry Diltz is back in Australia once more, and what's been a lifelong hobby for the 70-year-old is now the focus of an exhibition in Sydney.
Did you realise how lucky you were that you were, I guess, you know, documenting the musical icons of your generation?
Yes, and the answer is no. No, I never once thought, gee, you know, someday I'm going to have all these pictures. It's going to be a sort of a history of a time, which is what it's turned out to be now.
While he makes a lot more money now off these prints than he did 35 years ago, Henry Diltz continues working. But he still plays by his own rules, shooting for the artist and not the record company.
Oh, I do get a lot of phone calls from people. Usually they want it to look like that Crosby, Stills, Nash cover or that Doors cover, you know. They want it to look like Morrison Hotel.
That report from Kirsten Murray, and for more information about Henry Diltz's work, just go to our website at abc.net.